Good morning and welcome to Melbourne's Shrine of Remembrance for the ABC's live telecast of the 2019 Anzac Day March. The weather outlook for today is 22 degrees with a light bit of cloud. All in all, the weather is looking fine for the march. For many Australians honouring those who have served, this morning began with the dawn service where thousands of Victorians stepped out into the autumn darkness.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
May we remember lost fathers, lost brothers and sons who now lie in the peaceful soil of France. 114,000 Victorians enlisted, 89,000 of them served abroad, 19,000 killed. That's 1/3 of those killed were Victorian. We remember Australians and our nation's allies during the World War II Western Desert campaigns, 9 months of continuous bravery and sacrifice at El Alamein, Egypt. We remember women at home that forged a national workforce. Your mother, grandmother, sister, or young girl who lived in your neighbourhood may very well have given her heart and soul to that workforce. We remember the bravery, heroics, suffering and enduring courage of women in war. Australian nurses who served during the decades of conflict and war, including present-day Australian Defence Medical Reserve personnel serving in terrorised faraway lands. We remember those who were brutalised by war, became prisoners of war, and suffered unimaginable degradation of body, mind and spirit. They should also never be denied or forgotten. The Anzac spirit, born on the Gallipoli Peninsula, reinforced the tenets of courage, self-reliance, initiative and mateship. History bears witness to this.
As always, stirring stuff. There were 25,000 people at that service this morning. Well, the march is underway. In a moment, I'll be joining Colonel Michelle Campbell in the commentary box. But first, here's our roving reporter for this morning, James Hancock. James, welcome.
Paul, thousands of Victorians have gathered. They're lining St Kilda Road from the Prince's Bridge here to the Shrine of Remembrance. 9,500 people are expected to take part in today's march. Of course, it's an opportunity for all Australian veterans and those from allied nations to come together. For all of us to honour their service, remember the many lives lost and show support for current Defence Force members. The parade is due to finish at 11:30 and I'll be out interviewing some of the participants as well as our guest commentators. Paul.
Thank you very much, James. And those are the scenes here in Melbourne. I'm joined in commentary this morning by Colonel Michelle Campbell. And Michelle, welcome to you. It's a terrific morning and it's starting nice and early today.
Thanks, PK. Yes, half an hour earlier this year. And we've got great weather. On screen at the moment, we have the nursing services. Hello. All wearing their poppy scarves.
They look great, don't they? And those people down there watching the march have been gathering since about 7:30 this morning. So they've been there for a good hour. The best spots are the seats, and they fill up pretty quickly. And then all of the spaces along, right up until the steps of the shrine. And so it is a lovely morning here. A very clear morning, actually, quite still at the dawn service. So terrific weather. Sometimes it's a bit wet, sometimes it's a bit cold at the dawn service, but today it's, I would say, perfect conditions.
Now we have a number of female veterans from the Australian Women's Army Service. And they saw service from 1941 to 45. The unit was demobilised in 1947, but the total enlistments were 24,026. Their maximum strength was around 20,051 in January 1944.
We've got plenty of youngsters here as well today, carrying the banners and supporting their mothers and fathers and grandmothers as well.
Yeah, the Women's Veterans Network Australia, they connect the past and present women of defence with resources, support and information to live an empowered and fulfilling life. They solely focus on the wellbeing of female veterans.
There's the first of our marching bands coming through. The kids from the school out of Blackburn. And they've got a big day as well, the marching bands. Welcome to them all. In perfect formation there. And they'll do a couple of laps as well. So they'll be nice and tired by the end of the march. But they'll stay in formation throughout. And it's a big day for those kids and their teachers. They love it.
A number of them do 2 or 3 stints along St Kilda Road. They go back to the beginning and they march again. Up
and back and get their 10,000 steps as well.
Yes.
There's the
more than 10,000.
That's right. The New Zealand veterans coming through there and representatives.
Okay.
I can't hear.
We're joined in commentary this morning and have been for the last couple of years by Chris Hudnett, who's going to be telling us about the Air Force representatives today in the march, and John Carroll, who's a lieutenant of the Navy, and he's going to be telling us about the Navy contingent, which will be very, very strong again. Good morning to you all.
Good morning, Paul.
There we go, the Victorian Railways coming through there. And some veterans getting right up the front there in the march, and getting that honour as well, and being applauded all the way. Now it's a slight change to today, and that's one of the reasons we're nice and early, is that the wreath laying ceremony will be done a little bit later on. The Premier Daniel Andrews has already represented the government here this morning by making the guest speech this morning at the dawn service, and all of those dignitaries will be back with us a little bit later on. And John, the Navy is marching proudly this morning.
As usual.
We have the Corps of
We have
Commissioners Association. And now, over to you, John.
The band is being led by Lieutenant David Coit, and PO musician Ray Dowler is the drum major. Being led this year by Commander Darren Jeffs and the Command Warrant Officer Michael Chuck Connors. Contingent of approximately 400 men and women, all from that great place service.
HMAS Service, and I had the pleasure of speaking to Captain Mike Oborn, who is the Chief Officer down there at HMAS Service, and he said that this morning that they're having that another strong contingent, of course, but last year it was enormous, wasn't it, John? And that was for the centenary of the end of World War I. Today, many more Navy officers and personnel are going out into the communities. And so if you've already been, or if you're going to a different service this morning at your local RSL or what have you in the towns and suburbs around Victoria, you might see the HMAS Cerberus represented there as well.
Recruit School is being led by Andrew Howe, as the commander in charge of the Recruit School. And there's two divisions from Recruit School, about 120, 130 each. Rogers Division is being led by Lieutenant Reynolds.
And the marching looks exceptional as always, John.
They've probably been practicing for the last 8 or 9 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And so many young faces there, or just starting out in their careers.
That'll be the recruit school that's just gone through.
Yep. There's the Australian Youth Band, as you can see there now in their blue and orange. And you can see that the naval units are behind there. This morning we're going to be seeing the World War II veterans in their cars, and they'll be coming through, and they've been given priority as well. So we're looking forward to those veterans coming through, and of course fewer of those veterans are attending marches every year, so it's going to be a real treat to honour them this morning. John, there we see HMAS Australia.
It's a county class heavy cruiser. I think you'll find that the group is being led by Robert Savines and Grace Hill. Grace Hill was a messenger at Monterey, a fleet radio unit that it was Australia's Bletchley Park. She's sworn to secrecy even now. Canberra was a heavy cruiser that was sunk on Sable Island, replaced by the Shropshire, courtesy of the Royal Navy.
That's why those banners are coming through together, John?
Yes, that's right. My uncle was on Canberra, as was my first foreman shipwright that I had anything to do with, Red Slater, both Canberra survivors.
See the kids getting involved and supporting their loved ones as well, which is much appreciated. Families, descendants, also walking proudly this morning.
N-class destroyers, the 4 or 5 N-class destroyers, Napier, Nestor, Norman, Nepal and Nizam, never ever served or came back to Australia. Also always served elsewhere.
Yep.
They'd be descendants there. I don't think there's any N-class around at the moment.
No, it's great. I think it's great for them to be there, be able to march.
Manura 1, landing craft infantry, originally started off as an armed merchant cruiser. Scope Iron Flotilla, aptly named by Mr. Goebbels, the German Minister for Propaganda, led by the Stewart Vampire, Vendetta, Voyager and Waterhen. Bataan was a tribal class destroyer, served in the latter part of World War II and Korea. Condamine, river class frigate, much the same as the Hawke fleet. Tell by the names, they are named after rivers.
Yes, and how important is it, John, to have those names come through on the placards and the banners?
It's very important in as much as people don't know all that much about the Navy. The Navy is, once they're out over the horizon, very little is ever recorded about them except in the commanding officer's report of proceedings for that particular month, which is usually done by the navigator. They're aptly named the Silent Service. You really got to dig to find any information on the naval comings and goings. It's up to the likes of authors to dig a bit deeper and find out a few. When I did my doctorate in naval history, I combined the report of proceedings with logbooks.
Yeah.
And you get a very accurate measure of what actually did go on. Commemorative was another armed merchant cruiser that was converted into an LSI, landing ship infantry. Commemorative was originally a merchant ship. They put a lot of guns on it and then found that they needed to transport infantry, so they took many of the guns off and
well represented the Canimbla this morning.
yes. Australia again. Oh, that's West Australia.
That's the West
Another
Australia.
one.
Yeah.
Another one of these armed merchant cruisers that was converted into an LSI. Mildura, corvettes, all named after country towns. 56 corvettes built in Australian dockyards.
Yep.
And we made another 4 for the Indians. I think my dockyard down at Williamstown made 14. So there's Mr. Makings, leading the Naval Association. With Russell Pettis, the state president, holding on grimly to the banner. Russell and I were classmates at Creswell together when we did our officers' course. HMAS Anzac and Tobruk, battle class destroyers. Warramunga, tribal class. Manura 2, another one of these American LSTs that we took off to the United States Navy and converted them into heavy ships, landing ships. And the Bubbly's just gone through the diving team. There's 2 diving teams at the moment. One was very active in Vietnam, CDT-3. The communicators, flag wavers and Morse code.
We saw the Fleet Air Arm go through there as well, John.
Yeah, the birdies.
Yeah.
They've got four Fleet Air Arm squadrons, all helicopters. Gone are the days of Skyhawks and fixed-wing aircraft.
Yes.
This is Submariners. We've had 4 lots of submarines in our time. They're a great defensive force, the submarines. You never know where they're going to pop up. And we've had B-class, J-class, Abrams and the Collins class. And the current government thinks that much of them, they're going to buy another 12.
That's right.
We'll build them in Australia.
It's a big project, much talked about.
Yes, it is.
Political.
In Vietnam. This has been my group. HMAS Sydney and Vietnam Logistics Support Veterans Association, of which I am.
Yes.
a very proud president.
And there's always seems to be big anniversaries in the last few years as well, and I guess the anniversary is 50 years since many men and women would have been drafted to service in 1969. And you were active in 69, John?
67 I served in Sydney, again in 1972.
Yep.
It wasn't a very comfortable ship, very hot in places, and there it is. We attended a funeral yesterday, one of our shipmates, Roy Gunning. Roy served on Yarra with me, and he'll be sadly missed.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, John.
We had the motorcycle gang who belonged to the derelicts came and gave a very good coverage with his cortege.
Yep.
HMAS Melbourne. Very checkered career to Melbourne. My shipwright officer said, you don't want to go to Melbourne Sunday? I said, no, I'll go to Sydney instead.
Yes.
Fair miles. We had a multitude of those. I think we had, at one stage, we had just on 60 of those. Motor torpedo boats, motor gunboats, and harbour defence motor launchers. All wooden, and the crew were about 15, and they were the small ships made of all work. They went everywhere.
The Scouts are doing a great job this morning, Scouts and Cubs.
Yeah, Dems has got fond memories for me too. My father was in Dems.
Yeah.
He served right through the war years, 39 right through to 45. Called up a year before the war started.
Wow.
Perth Association, that would be Perth 2, and Houston. They both fought in Indonesian waters as the Japanese started to come down from the north, and they were both sunk at the same time, the Houston and the Perth.
Well,
Battle of the Java Sea.
in fact, you can't really talk about the Australian Navy's achievements in World War II without mentioning that the union with the US Navy. They worked so well together, didn't they?
Yes, they did. The Hobart, Leander class cruiser, and the DDG-39, which is the Charles F. Adams class destroyer, served in Vietnam. Good to see it. It's on the Hobart 2's banner. Far East Strategic Reserve. My little friend Les Bailey with his hat on. Far East Strategic Reserve was encompassed 1955 right through to 1962. Malay emergency, Indonesian confrontation. I served on the Strategic Reserve in 1967, 68 on Yarra. HMAS Voyager survivors. Good daring class destroyer that was sunk off the Sydney coast in collision with HMAS Melbourne. Here's my old ship, HMAS Yarra. Yarra 3 I served on. The River class, well, we knew them as Type 12 frigates, anti-submarine frigates. Top speed about 30 knots. Very good. Quick Mats, Q-class destroyers. Quick Mats and Quiberon. Both started off as destroyers, were converted at Williamstown, made into anti-submarine frigates. At the time there was great consternation about submarine threats. We didn't have any submarines at the time. We had a couple of C-class out that trained our people in anti-submarine warfare. Allied ships.
Nice little salute there from the young fella. Now you're listening to the voice of John Carroll, by the way. And John, always great to have you here to talk about the Navy. We really appreciate it. And we love the passion that you bring to the call every year as well. The Navy so well represented. You're also joined this morning by Colonel Michelle Campbell, who can tell us all about the Army and what part it will play in the march this morning on this beautiful Anzac Day in Melbourne.
Thanks, PK. What you're seeing on the screen at the moment is 4th Brigade, Victoria's own brigade, commanded by Brigadier Douglas Laidlaw, you can see there. And the troops are looking absolutely fantastic there. 4th Brigade was formed in September 1914 for service during World War I. The elements of the brigade served at Gallipoli and on the Western Front and disbanded in 1919. Only briefly, because 1921 the brigade was re-raised as a unit of Australia's part-time military forces based in Victoria, as it continues today. During World War II, the brigade served in New Guinea and New Britain campaigns. Following World War II, it was part of the 3rd Division, but now it is housed in the 2nd Division. The units of the 4th Brigade include 4th, 19th Prince of Wales's Light Horse Regiment, 22nd Engineer Regiment, the 108th Sydney Squadron, the 5th 6th Battalion Royal Victoria Regiment, the 8th 7th Battalion Royal Victoria Regiment, the 4th Combat Service Support Battalion. You can see there the 5th 6th Battalion pipes and a group of bagpipe there.
Great sound it is on this day.
And there's the troops of the Bravo Company, 5-6 RBR. The Scottish heritage entitles them to wear the kilt.
Yeah, it looks great, don't you reckon, the kilt? I like it. Very comfortable too.
So the 4th Brigade contributed to personnel to deployments in Afghanistan, East Timor and the Solomon Islands. It continues to support commitment to Rifle Company Butterworth. And within Australia, they've provided assistance to civil community, particularly during the 2009 Victorian bushfires and the 2011 floods.
Yeah, we can't forget that, can we? The contribution made on Australian soil as well. It's not just service overseas, but really supporting communities in different crises.
The brigade is known as Victoria's own, so in times of crisis and emergency, they can be relied on to support it. Groups coming through Afghanistan and Iraq veterans. So Iraq, I'm just going to have a look at the banner there, but I'm not sure if we've got anyone marching from the Iraq invasion from 2013 on Old Falconer or Catalyst in April 2005. Yep, there's a couple of veterans from that time. Major Gary Ward was there in Iraq back in the early 2000s and has since seen service more recently in Iraq.
It seems so recent, doesn't it, Michelle? But that's some 15 years ago that those people were deployed. It's great that they could be here today and take part in the march. And much has been made about supporting our younger veterans, if we can call them those people that have started living back as civilians in the past 10, 15 years. We know how difficult it can be too, so hopefully we're getting better and better at providing those services of support.
So there we have the RACT, Royal Australian Corps of Transport Association.
Good morning to you. I love the waves to the cameras and the formation that never leaves you as well. The marching is still very impressive.
So there's the Commando Association being led by Colonel Doug Knight. The association membership includes the 1st Commando Regiment, 2nd Commando Regiment, 1 Commando Company, 2 Commando Company, 126 Signal Squadron, 301 Signal Squadron, the N and Z Special Units, and then there's World War II independent companies, regiments and squadrons.
I love that poppy waistcoat, by the way. I know a certain weather presenter on News Breakfast, former Navy officer, who would love to have that, so we might have to do some homework.
The Commando distinctive with their green berets. And a shout out to the volunteers who are volunteering their time and their service to drive our disabled veterans and also offer their own cars. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, we saw that there were a lot of them too. Just before the march started, the disabled veterans were driven in. From the spire down there, where you can see from the Arts Centre, they started down that way, and the length of those cars went all the way up to the shrine, to so many of those. And because they went a bit earlier, they can find hopefully a comfortable seat here and watch the other marches and watch the rest of the parade go through.
And there we have the Z Force, part of the Commandos.
Kids going through there with their relatives, Michelle, sometimes talked about as whether or not it might be appropriate. What do you think about families and even the youngsters getting involved there in the march?
I think it's part of the commemorative life cycle, isn't it? We want to pass on to the younger generation our lessons learnt and to ensure that they understand and perhaps not make the same mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. There's your mob, John.
They're not a mob. They're matlows. They're very nice people.
Yes. It's, Captain O'Born said that's HMA service where you make sailors. I said they don't just make sailors there. My mum and dad continued their romance by both serving at HMA service. It made 4 kids as well in the end.
Must be the atmosphere down there.
The sea air.
Sea air.
Kids came later, by the way. There you go. If you can't get here early enough to get one of those wooden seats, which is a permanent structure, that you can get bring your own fold-out seats, and many have done that this morning. Plenty of flags around as well, and the poppy scarves.
And it's terrific to march up St Kilda Road and have the crowd cheer you on and wave the flags. It's a tremendous show of support and really well appreciated.
There's one of our volunteers standing by as well. Now, good morning to you. If you're just tuning in, you are watching the Victorian Anzac Day March here in lovely Melbourne, and it is a lovely morning this morning. I attended the dawn service today. The Premier spoke as a guest speaker, and there were other speakers there, and it's been an unusually mild build-up to Anzac Day, and it wasn't cold. It wasn't really overcoat weather this morning. It was quite lovely. Clear and crisp, and just a beautiful place to be. Lots of poppies. The barracks, of course, are not too far away, and they had a couple of the army tanks out the front there, Michelle, in those vehicles, so people are wandering around and having a look at those.
Good for recruiting, huh?
Yeah, why not? Promote the best of the Army and Navy and Air Force.
And there we have a great shot of the shrine. What a magnificent structure. It was opened in 11th of November 1934. The Duke of Gloucester performed the dedication in the presence of 300,000 people, and thousands more lined the city streets, and 10,000 pigeons were released from a balcony to tell the Victorians that the shrine had been dedicated.
It's been improved and improved, and there always been good money spent on these things all around the country, in fact. Recently, big money promised for Canberra, but Melbourne is as good as any you would find anywhere in the world.
And here we have the Australian Army training team Vietnam. During the Vietnam War, it was a decorated unit. Its members, 4 VCs awarded, and many imperial and foreign awards also. It was initially a 30-man team of Army instructors which sent to help the South Vietnamese Army in 1962. The team was increased to 100 and then 200 by 1971.
Really specialised work, wasn't it, Michelle?
Yeah. The 1st Armoured Regiment Association, formed in 1946. It has 1 APC troop as well as the 2nd and 3rd CAV squadrons, and deployed MI13's APCs, Armoured Personnel Carriers, from the 1st Armoured Regiment. And in Vietnam they had their Centurion tanks. The 4th 19th Prince of Wales's Light Horse Regiment Association. The unit did march with 4 Brigade, the current members. This is the association. Distinctive with their black berets and their insignia.
Wonderful representation by the Vietnam vets here in Melbourne and all around different services all over the state.
It's good to see the Army Cadets supporting, holding the banners.
Yep. Oh, it would be an inspiring occasion for them, no doubt.
And we have the artillery. This should be the 131 Divisional Locating Battery. Saw service in Vietnam 1966 to 71.
Welcome to all those teenagers from Vermont Secondary College doing their part today, making their schools and their families proud as well by taking part, providing the soundtrack for these marches as they head all the way along.
So here we have the Royal Australian Engineers Vietnam Vets Association. All these members served in Vietnam. There were 1,000 sappers served as part of the 1st Australian Task Force. They had a number of roles. They were combat engineers, road and bridge building, land clearing, sailing small ships, water and electricity to Nui Dat and Vung Tau, and power stations for the hot water and toilet facilities. So quite a broad range of support to the troops there.
The tunnel rats are coming up behind there, and I'm told that several of the tunnel rats are going back to Vietnam. There's almost annual trips now back to Vietnam for some of those veterans, and this year they're going to be joined by some engineers who served in Afghanistan and Iraq. So we're coming together of the generations there and sharing of stories.
Well, the rats were sappers who were attached to the infantry units and were known as splinter teams. In addition to the mine and booby trap clearing, they had bomb disposal duties. Armed with a pistol and a bayonet, finding and removing enemy weapons and documents in tunnels before blowing up the installations. As you'd imagine, the casualty rate was quite high, about 33%. So hats off to these guys who put their life in harm's way.
There's Butch Date giving thumbs up in the middle of the pack there. Good morning to you and all your mates, Butch. There's the signallers coming through.
A number of signal squadrons through Vietnam, and 104 signal squadron that were deployed in 67 through to 73, tactical communicators, and then there was 110 signal squadron based out of Vung Tau.
There you see a young fellow with a photograph hung around his neck, and we're seeing more and more of that as well. Not to mention the old Collingwood merchandise getting a run there on one of those marches.
Here's my corps, the Royal Australian Army Ordnance Corps. Plenty of different trades in Vietnam there. Royal Australian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, RAMI.
How do you feel, Michelle, watching your friends and colleagues march through?
I guess you could say respect.
Yeah.
It's great to see them out here, and the general public supporting the march. So quite honoured to have that lineage.
Actually, it's the definition of respect, isn't it, this day? When people come and some people will applaud for 3 hours.
And wave those flags.
Yeah.
There we go. Right on cue.
On cue.
Thank you.
Yes, and the smiles say it all from both sides of the aisle. What a beautiful shot there as the Vietnam vets approach the steps just below that picture there, the steps, and there's the Melbourne skyline in the background, and you can see how lovely it is. Yeah, some people have rugged up. It's a cool morning, but very fine, actually.
That's a great view from the shrine. I mean, it was chosen for its elevated and steep location, thus allowing its silhouette to stand out against the skyline of Melbourne. At the time of the construction back in the 20s and 30s, the shrine was visible from most suburbs and the bay.
I did have some communication with one of our more well-known Vietnam veterans, Tim Fisher, who is the former Deputy Prime Minister, and he sent a note saying that he's just out of Peter Mac. He's been going through some health dramas, to say the least. He'll be Yakandanda today, no doubt, and then on to Borry Creek. He gets to a couple of different services, and he wanted to give a shout out to his old Unit 1 RAR. So there you go.
All medals.
Well, we are expecting the RAR Association coming through very shortly.
We'll give him another shout out then. And he also wanted to point out that there are a couple of things overseas today. The new Sir John Monash Centre, the display and the cafeteria is finally open for business at Villas Bretonneux. So that's happening today. And there's also a tribute to the Australians overseas in France at a cathedral which is bigger than Notre Dame that we saw have that awful fire recently, a bigger cathedral which is very close to where Australia pushed back the Germans. And so there are things happening every year, it seems, all around the world to mark Anzac Day in a special way. And those are the marches that will soon make their way up to the Shrine of Remembrance. 25,000 people turned up to the dawn service this morning, and they went as far as those tall trees you can see there, all the way back. People standing in the darkness and listening to some wonderful words in the last post, and it didn't matter that you couldn't see who was speaking, or you couldn't warm your hands at the eternal flame. Just to be there was enough for people. They turn around and then they walk away, go and have a cup of coffee, and some of them stay for the march, which is wonderful. It's great to be able to bring you these pictures too, and these wonderful moments on the ABC. I hope you can stay with us all day. In fact, we will be covering all of the events in Australia and overseas as we usually do. Might be a good time to say hello to Chris. Yeah, the Air Force hasn't flown by yet. Chris,
no, not yet, Paul. I was speaking to the executive officer from the museum just a few days ago, and he tells me they'll be providing a formation of aircraft for us again today, so that'll be good to see.
Beautiful.
Probably about 10:30 or 11:15.
And how are you feeling today?
Good. It should be a good march. Yeah, for our Air Force contingent when it comes through, about 10:30.
Yeah, and I know you're always a bit torn on whether to get out there and march.
March, yes, always a bit of a pull in two directions, but
we're pleased that you're with us.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, we're having lunch today, so that'll be good to catch up with the guys.
Yeah. How many will turn up for that, Chris?
Oh, about 40 or so. Yep.
We catch up on modern events, or we talk about the old days?
I'll talk about the old days. I think it's usually the go.
And here we are, the Royal Australia Regiment Association, led there by Colonel John James. So from Vietnam at its peak, in the Vietnam War, it consisted of 9 battalions of around 800 men in each. The majority of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, did 2 12-month tours in South Vietnam. So the role of the Royal Australian Infantry is to seek out and close with the enemy, to kill and capture them, to seize and hold ground, to repel attack by day or night, regardless of season, weather or terrain. 9th Battalion. A notable young lieutenant in Vietnam was Lieutenant Peter Cosgrove. Went on to be our Governor General.
Yes, we've heard from him this morning as well. 68 to 69, and it's the 50-year anniversary of 1969. For those who may have been coming home, or may have in fact been heading towards Vietnam.
We've served in Somalia, Cambodia and Rwanda. In 1995, the battalion was delinked and 2RA and 4RA. They deployed to East Timor as the first Australian infantry battalion to serve in the modern land force since the Korean War. It was delinked in December 2006 in 5 RAR and 7 RAR. The battalion has had contributions in the operations in Iraq, in particular at Armatan Task Group and Overwatch Battle Group.
I think it's great to have all the names of the places there. Some that don't get as much of a mention as others.
It's one RAR association.
Good friend of mine there, I can see on the screen, Philip Ham there with one RAR, so that's good to see. Good day, Philip. Tall gentleman.
Thumbs up. There's the shout out to one RAR anyway. Hope you're enjoying the ABC coverage of the march. We'll give a shout out to as many as we can along the way.
There's 2 RAR Association. They had 2 tours of Vietnam. First in April 67 and the second one in May 1970. We have a US presidential unit citation for its party in the Battle of Capion in Korea, 22 to 25 April 1951. February 64, and I served in Malaysia, 65 to 67. So in 1968, 4AR relieved 2AR, based out in Dad. And on the 2nd of June, it was formally renamed 4AR NZ, the Anzac Battalion.
The 5th Battalion just went through there too, Michelle. And here comes the 6th. Very proudly the blue dog on the banner. And wearing proudly their medals. Here comes the 7th Battalion as well. And many of the same names, Vietnam, Rwanda. Service all around the world.
It's good to see the Vietnam scarves out in support. The colours of the medals awarded during the time. It's quite a long walk from the CBD up to the shrine, so put on those masks.
And you can see the concern on the loved ones' faces too.
But look at the determination on their face.
Exactly. Great to see. And good to have those cars available as well.
Yes.
If I can butt in, I just saw a friend of mine, the Flea, Rob Edsel. Rob Edsel and I form part of the Vietnam Veterans Education Team. And Bob proudly marching with 7RAR. He did the second tour. Another one of the guys on the big team is Jim Dewar. I think Jim's in a poor shape at the moment, but he did the first tour. Took him up to Sydney, took him up in the Sydney and brought him home again in the Sydney.
Special air service, very distinctive with the sandy bars. Many of the squadrons rotated through Vietnam for year-long deployments. Each of the Sabre squadrons did around 2 tours and withdrawn in October 71. They worked closely with the New Zealand SAS.
Built up quite a reputation for themselves.
Yeah, their missions included medium-range reconnaissance patrols, observation of enemy troop movements, and long-range offensive operations and ambushing in enemy-dominated territory. So during its time in Vietnam, the SASR proved highly successful with members of the regiment known to the Viet Cong as Ma Rung, or Phantoms of the Jungle, due to their stealth. 161 Recce Squadron, distinctive by their pale blue berets. Royal Australian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers again. They would fix everything from trucks to weapons to generators and everything in between.
Critical support team.
Absolutely.
A lot of trust involved in getting it right. And there is the march, and the marchers all the way back down to the Arts Centre there. Still coming through at their own time. Some in cars, some being assisted, and some marching in perfect formation as well.
Royal Australian Army Service Corps, Vietnam. They represent the soldiers who served in logistics, or what we could term now the combat service support, so transport, air dispatch, combat supplies such as food, water, ammunition, fuel, hands and repairs. 85 Transport Platoon. They served in Vietnam 67 to 71. They were cargo carrying, water tippers, dump trucks and tank transporters. They were known as the road runners. 86, they're known as Hell on Wheels. They're now based out of Amberley, 9th Force Support Battalion. They were cargo carrying, water. Behind them we should have the 87th Transport Platoon, who are known as Unleashed.
I'm seeing a theme here.
The maintenance and deployment combos.
Good morning to you, sir. Enjoy the applause, you're getting along the way. Another one of the exceptional bands coming through. Looks like the ambulance band.
I think it's their first time, Paul. First time they've participated in one.
Yeah, it's terrific. I don't think I've seen them in the last couple of years, so welcome. They sound great.
Coming to swear in the Royal Australian Army Medical Corps Association. So, first Australian Field Hospital. So the word Australian is used in the unit to differentiate it from the American Field Hospital. So the unit really became the main Australian medical unit in Vietnam. The hospital was based out of Vung Tau at 50 beds and could expand up to 106 beds, including 50-bed surgical ward, 50-bed medical ward and 6-bed intensive care unit.
And they had a good strike rate too.
Nearly 99% of the patients who reached the hospital survived their injuries or illnesses.
That's outstanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Incredible, really.
The use of medical evacuation or dust-off helicopters enabled a soldier to receive emergency treatment at the hospital within 30 minutes of being wounded or injured in the field. Incredible.
You can imagine the circumstances they were working in as well.
So 8 Field Ambulance was raised in April '66 and was based out of Puckapunya. Staffed mainly with CMF officers and deployed to Vung Tau in '67. We took over from the 2nd Field Ambulance, established the field hospital with 50 patients. The platoon was forward to support 1ATF. In '68, the field hospital expanded and became the first Australian field hospital.
You spend time at Puckapunya at all, Michelle?
Yes,
Yeah.
a lot of time, and it was usually in January or July, so it was either
nice
42
and cool.
degrees and hot and dusty and windy, or it was 4 degrees
Yeah.
or -4, very, very cold.
Good morning to anyone watching from Victoria's northeast, up at Pucka or Seymour or anywhere around that region. I was a Pucka kid for a couple of years when Dad was in the army.
My daughter was born in Puckapunya.
Yeah.
A shout out to our regional folk. I had messages from people in Wodonga and Mildura, Warrnambool and across to Bairnsdale. So shout out to all you guys. Thinking of you.
Let's go to our roving reporter now, and it's over to James.
Eden, what does Anzac Day mean for you?
Anzac Day would probably mean more to my pop. I really love coming out with him and spending the day with him, doing the march, going to the footy, having lunch together. It's really important to me because it's important to him.
I think that's the perfect summary of Anzac Day, isn't it, for young people, for the kids?
Well said.
Yeah. And not just for the kids, the ability to spend time with your family, learn more about your country's history and also your family history. And the more you can learn, the more connected you're going to be to the day and each other. James is out there with his microphone and he's going to be speaking to lots of people, so we'll hear from more of them a little bit later, and some of the dignitaries as well, as they finish the march and get ready for the further ceremonies at the Shrine of Remembrance. Yes, it's a good point that you make, Michelle, about those people in the regions. Plenty of people watching us from their towns around the state today. Good morning to you all. I hope you're enjoying your local services as well. Some of those places are just sensational and really beautiful services going on all around the place. And if you've just been to one and you're switching on, welcome to our coverage of the Melbourne March. And you see people coming through, walking or in the cars. All provided on a volunteer basis, which is terrific. Some of them flash cars and some of them your day-to-day variety.
Yeah. Two-door car. Might need some help getting out of that one.
No, it looks like a comfortable ride to me. And you're joined this morning by our special commentators. We've got Michelle Campbell, John Carroll and Chris Hudner. And they can tell you all you need to know about these banners and the wonderful people marching behind them.
Here we go. We have the officer training unit in Skyville. This is stood up for the Vietnam War to train the officer cadets and graduate commission them for service over in Vietnam. Royal Victoria Regiment Association. It came into being in 1982 in order to maintain contact with the ex-service members and provide support to the regiment and the current serving members.
Some deployed to West Timor and the Solomon Islands on their peacekeeping missions.
Australian engineers, sappers, members of both serving and retired. There's Lieutenant Colonel Bill Van Roo, who's the President. Military police, distinctive with their cherry red berets. It was previously known as the Australian Army Provost Corps, formed in April 1916 as the Anzac Provost Corps. It is responsible for battlefield traffic control, security duties, prisoner of war handling, investigation services, maintaining discipline and running the military prisons.
And they've served in every conflict and war since World War I. An impressive history of service there. Striking looking band there with the orange ties and sashes.
So we have the British Commonwealth Occupation Force from Japan post-war from January 46. The British Commonwealth Occupation Force totalled 45,000 people from the UK, India, New Zealand and Australia. About 16,000 Australians served there, including the infantry contingent of 4,700 base units consisting of 5,300, an Air Force wing of 2,200 and 130 from the Australian General Hospital. The Navy also had a presence there with the British Pacific Fleet.
That's a nice way to do it. Can't fit all those medals on your chest, you can bring them in a frame. Yes. Just don't drop them. And some of those scouts, by the way, they're doing a terrific job carrying the banners, but they're looking heavy at this stage. They're doing a great job as well, carrying that all the way from down near the Arts Centre.
The 2nd 11th Field Regiment. The regiment was formed part of the 8th Division and moved to Bonegilla, where it joined other units of its division. While in Bonegilla, the regiment received its first allocation of guns, 18-pounders, for the First World War.
And so these are descendants walking through, descendants of World War II veterans. And this has been the big change, I guess, in the marches in recent years as well.
They've seen service in Australia, in Darwin and in New Guinea and Bougainville. In 1945 it was disbanded.
Proudly wearing the medals of so long ago. And all of those banners are still going to keep on coming through in these marches, which I think is a wonderful thing.
Forestry companies. The Royal Australian Engineers. We have the railway units, also Royal Australian Engineers. Australian Survey Corps Association coming into view. They served during World War II and later in Vietnam, providing operational survey and mapping. Returned to Australia, many members remain in survey industry and cartography and printing industries.
Yeah, some good skills to take over to other industries.
Yeah, many have made significant contributions to post-war in the National Mapping Program and many other major projects. Surveyors are now part of the Royal Australian Engineers.
And it's good. It is good to see those banners, don't you think, Michelle, from the World War II? And
it gives some history on a banner, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I know it's very sad that generation is passing us by, and we still have quite a few World War II veterans, but they're 99, they're 100, they're all around that age now if they're still with us. So it is a passing in the last couple of years of that wonderful generation, perhaps a generation of such standard we'll never see again. But to have those banners there makes us look back at their service, and it gives us something to, particularly the descendants, to get those medals and wear them proudly and take part. I think it's one of the best things we can do.
And certainly, we missed the beginning of the march, but we had 3 World War II veterans, so one for each service representing. So we had Keith Hearn, Sam Kaiser and Robert Spencer. 93, 100 and 92. So excellent.
And we're seeing some famous battles there on the banners, and one of those being Kokoda, with the 39th coming through. You see the 2nd 14th there at some stage as well. But yes, what an effort, hey, to still be here and be around 100 years old and still be able to turn up to the march. We'll be hearing from some of those gentlemen a little bit later.
The 10th Field Ambulance has just well past the first Ordnance Field Park. Second first field workshop, closely followed by Tip 2. Army Field Workshop.
It's one of the young fellas carrying the banner. I reckon they're doing a great job. It's heavier than it looks. All working in together.
Brigade workshops, 126, 127. And coming along, we had the 6th Division units.
Some more famous battle names there. Libya, Greece, Crete.
The 6th Division formed as part of the 2nd Force, the 2nd AIF. It served in 40-41 in North Africa, Greece, Crete and Syria. We relocated to the South Pacific in 1942 to defend against the Japanese threat to Australia. We served with distinction in New Guinea, including the Dakota Track.
That's the scene in Melbourne. And we're going to hear from the Governor now, and James is standing by. Over to you, mate.
Victorian Governor Linda Dessau, what does Anzac Day mean for you?
It really does mean looking back and thinking with gratitude of everything that's been done on our behalves today. So it's very much about the present as well as the past, and very much about securing our future as well.
As the state's governor, it must be great to see so many people turning out to the Anzac Day march.
It's fantastic, and I can see the full diversity of Victoria. As we were marching, it just looked as it should look, and so many families, so many young children, so they're learning the Anzac story too.
Linda Dessau, the Governor there, speaking to James, who's doing a great job for us out and about.
Descendants are proudly wearing their medals.
Yes, not that nice day for a walk as well with the dogs. Just on the edge of the Botanic Gardens here. A real feature of Melbourne. For people coming overseas. I've seen lots of tourists this morning too, coming past and taking some photographs up on the shrine. There's the Chief Marshal.
Colonel Jason Cook doing a great job with the marshals.
Very busy on his phone this morning, I know that. Taking and making calls and making sure everything runs smoothly.
Yeah.
This is a big operation. And if you're just joining us, it's a wonderful morning this morning. The wind has just sprung up, so it's nice and cool now. Not too hot for the marchers.
So there's the 2nd 6 Cavalry Commando Regiment. Descendants there. It was formed in New South Wales in November 1939, originally raised as an armoured reconnaissance regiment attached to the 6th Division. In that role it saw service in North Africa and in the Middle East. Later in Bardia, Tobruk and Syria. The 2nd Field Regiment, Royal Australian Artillery, formed in Victoria October 1939, saw service in North Africa, Greece, Crete, Ceylon, and was disbanded in January 46. The 2nd, 3rd. Libya, Greece, Crete and New Guinea with second first. And another engineer field company 2-2. Scouts doing a great job supporting, carrying those banners all the way from the CBD up to the shrine.
Continuing on with the 6th Division there. And some more families of those who served. And some veterans there as well with the medals, the big smiling faces on the kids.
Second 8 Field Company, Royal Australian Engineers. And I dare say that might be his great-grandfather?
Yeah.
Maybe great-grandfather.
That might have been the cap passed down as well. Cap or hat that time. And there you go, there's some slouch hats coming through too on the kids. They look great.
The 2nd 6th Infantry Battalion. You can see where they've served. Battle of Bardia and further actions into Brook. Battle of Greece, Crete, Syria, Lebanon, Ceylon. Then they went on to New Guinea in 1943. Their medal honours are maintained by the 5th 6th Battalion, Royal Victoria Regiment. 2nd 7th were formed in May 1940.
Yes, we're looking out this morning for the in the 2nd 7th, Bill Holmes and Lyle Butling, and coming through in a car. World War II veterans and mates for all of the time since the war.
The 2nd 8th Infantry Battalion was formed in Puckapunyal, Victoria, originally part of the 17th Brigade. They transferred to the 19th Brigade and saw service in Egypt, Libya, Greece, and then moved to fight the Japanese. Disbanded in December 1945.
And Michelle, to take part in this parade and be in the march and wear those medals, can you just turn up? Do you have to register to take part? I suspect that you have to have some attachment to the associations.
Yeah, so on the RSL website, they publish the form-up points for all the different units. So descendants would contact the local association that they have an affiliation with and organise it through them.
Yeah, no, I think it's terrific. A little bit of planning, so maybe if you're thinking of doing that next year, then that might be the thing for you. If you've got those connections and you want to march, then you're entitled to.
The 2nd Field Ambulance. And now we're moving on to the 7th Division, which is the 2nd 4th Field Regiment, Royal Australian Artillery, saw service there in North Africa, Syria, New Guinea and Borneo.
There's our youngest participant this morning. Being well cared for.
Second, 4th there, and the signals. Eighteenth Australian Infantry Brigade. Saw service in the Middle East, North Africa, to Brook Alamein, Syria. Then they returned to Australia, only then to go to New Guinea, to Milne Bay, Boona, Gona, Shaggy Ridge.
Some more famous colours coming through here. Here's the second 14th, key to the Kokoda battle. And when they arrive in support of the 39th, they thought that they were looking at the superhumans arriving back from the Middle East, and they came together to defeat the Japanese in that famous battle. And the second 16th also behind played its part along the Kokoda Trail. Yeah, so many family members. In fact, I think there's more there this year than there were last year, that's for sure. Those families walking behind the banners. And I think we'll see more of that in years to come as well.
Second 21st. And the second 1st Australian Machine Gun Battalion.
Formed in 1939.
Yeah, originally raised in Ingleburn in New South Wales. Saw service in France, Greece, Crete until mid-1941, and then went to New Guinea. Final campaign mid-1945 in Borneo, disbanded in 1946.
Yes, so many of those soldiers went to the Middle East and were required back closer to home. And some of those battles in New Guinea were just unthinkable violence. Lovely view down there of Melbourne in the background as the marching continues. And we've got thousands and thousands of people are marching today.
The second Pioneer Battalion, descendants marching there. It was formed in May 1940. Served in Syrian campaign until February 1942, where they returned to Australia. Then went to Java to assist the Dutch against the Japanese, overrun by a vastly bigger force, and spent the rest of the war as POWs. The battalion later reformed and then served in New Guinea, Tarakan and Balakaba.
They look great too in those scarves, don't they? Must be a great feeling to pull those out of the drawer every year and wear that scarf with pride.
Second 5th Field Ambulance was raised in Victoria 1940 and embarked at Tobruk in January 41. Served in Egypt, Syria, New Guinea and Borneo. Of its members, they've been awarded the DCM, the MBE, an MM and 4 MRDs.
Secondary college kids got something to tell their friends when they go back to school tomorrow. They just went back to school this week and a day off for Anzac Day. But I would say that most schools are participating in some way in Anzac services across all the suburbs and towns of Victoria. I know that my kids are and their schools are heavily involved in local services.
We have the 8th Division. It was raised to serve in Southeast Asia and was present at the fall of Singapore, with most of its members being taken prisoner, with over 1 in 3 dying in captivity. That's sad. In addition to Singapore, the 8th Div served in Malaya, Rabaul and Timor.
There's the 8 Division signals coming through. And then behind the 2nd 21st.
The Gull Force.
And the Southwest Pacific in 1942, and once again you're seeing all those names of the places that they visited when they tried to hold ground and defend. And the Lark Force coming in.
So the second 22nd, its role was to protect the airfields at Lacune and Kunakwa and seaplane base of Rabaul, as well as to provide early warning.
The banners of the 2nd 29th as well, the 2nd 40th. Sparrow Force, we'll see in just a moment.
So the 2nd 40th was formed in mid-1940 from Tasmania. And after basic training, the 2nd 40th was sent to Darwin to form part of the defence garrison there. Following Japan's entry to the war, the battalion was deployed to Timor as part of Sparrow Force, and in early 1942 took part in the fighting on the island there. Outnumbered and lacking supplies, a number of them were POWs, although some were able to wage a guerrilla campaign across the island before being withdrawn by the end of the year. They have a number of battle honours, Southwest Pacific in 1942 and Kopang. Kopang is unique, no other unit in the Australian Army holding this battle honour. So in 1961-62 these honours entrusted to the Royal Tasmania Regiment and are maintained by the 12th 40th Battalion of the Royal Tasmania Regiment.
If you're just joining us, welcome. And this is the ABC coverage, of course, of the Melbourne March. Michelle Campbell, you're hearing there, give you some great history and some background of the banners there. And we're looking at those World War II banners. And there are a few World War II veterans. There still are some present today, and we're going to see some more coming through shortly.
The 13th Australian General Hospital was just on screen.
Yeah. In the middle of the shot there, still making their way up to the steps. Let's go to James now.
What are your thoughts on seeing so many people here today and so many younger people?
Well, it's amazing. You know, my RAC CV driver was in a Ford Mustang. Everybody was with their wide open mouths and they thought I was a very honoured lady. Yes. It's just beautiful to see the young people. I saw my grandson and my great-grandchildren running up here near the shrine. I think they said if they're going to see me, that's where they'll have to come.
Absolutely beaming. There you go, that's what it means.
So we're now moving on to the 9th Division. This was the 4th Division raised under the 2nd AIF and holds a number of distinctions. In frontline combat, the longest cumulative out of any Australian division, the only 2nd AIF division formed in the United Kingdom. And like the 6th and the 7th Division, one of the only Allied divisions to serve in both the Mediterranean and Pacific theatres. The 9th Div served in the Siege of Tobruk, the first and second battles of El Alamein and the New Guinea and Borneo campaigns. Their service in North Africa brought praise from both Allied and enemy generals, with both Montgomery and Rommel speaking highly of their efforts.
And there you're seeing families of those who fought in World War II coming through and proudly bearing their medals. And the cars are there to help people as well, to get them through the march. You might be able to walk all that way, but you can still go through and get the applause. You can see people lining up on both sides, and they've been lining up for a couple of hours just to get the best spots.
Part of the 2nd 4th Light Anti-Aircraft Regiment. Served in El Alamein and then later in New Guinea. 2nd 12th, raised in Victoria. Was part of the North Africa campaign. And then later on until 1945 in the Borneo campaign.
And we're seeing Tobruk mentioned in some of those banners too. I can tell you the Rats of Tobruk, the association is still operating in Victoria. All around Australia though, the association has folded. There are 54 Rats of Tobruk left in Australia today, and they're all around 100 years old. In fact, there was a Victorian man called Keith Clarkson who died just a fortnight ago, which was very, very sad for his family and his mates who are still around. You might have seen Bob Semple, who spoke to the Essendon Football Club yesterday, and I believe he's going to be tossing the coin at the big game today. He's 99 years old, Bob Semple. There's Alf Jackson, Tom Pritchard and Horty Crick, and those are the surviving Rats of Tobruk with the association still today. The association's going to have a bit of a lunch, and they'll catch up. But those veterans will be doing their own. But as I said, Bob Semple at the MCG, he'll be right in the middle of 100,000 people.
I'll see him there then.
Yes, he'll be much celebrated there. And Horty Crick is one of those rats. He's 100 years old now.
The 2nd 23rd Battalion. We've seen a number of the other battalions go through as well. Band all the way from Hamilton in the Western District. Been a long-standing supporter of the march. We have a new generation coming through here.
I think it may have been Bob Jeevons who went through there in the red car. So it was a real treat there for people to see him go past. One of the few World War II veterans.
So the 2nd 24th, also known as Wangaratta's Own, due to the time spent in the town training.
And as I say every year, good morning to everyone in lovely Wangaratta.
So they served in Benghazi in Libya in March 41. And they fought back to Tobruk, Rommel's Africa Corps. They were part of the siege of Tobruk and then fought in both Alamein battles. They returned to Australia in 43 and then were promptly sent off to New Guinea in later in 43 and Morotai and Tarakan in Borneo in 45, disbanding in 46. 2nd 3rd Pioneer Battalion. Served mainly in the Middle East and then redeployed to New Guinea in 44. Took part in the Battle of Tarakan during the Borneo campaign. Proud descendants there.
Okay, we're looking at Elf Abbott there in that white car. And what an amazing feat for him to be there. Elf lives in Nunawading, still drives his own car, but only short trips. I thought he was a cheeky man, and very respectful.
We've got the 3rd Division coming into view. Originally raised in World War I, the longest serving Australian Army division. It was re-raised between the wars and in World War II was mobilised in December 41 before being deployed to New Guinea in 43 and served out the remainder of the war in the Southwest Pacific Theatre.
What a moment there to have those two veterans coming through together side by side holding hands.
It'd be a long push, I think, Paul, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
For the march.
Yeah. Good that they're together.
I think the 3rd Division was only disbanded in 91 or 2, so my first posting as a 2nd Lieutenant was to the 3rd Division.
Let's throw down to James now. Over to you, mate.
Chris Hudnott, our guest commentator. Last month saw the passing of one of the RAAF's great characters. Tell me about them.
Yes, James, Flight Lieutenant Dudley Marrows was a Sunderland flying boat captain with 461 Squadron, and in July 1943 his aircraft attacked and sank a German U-boat, also coincidentally with the number 461. After the attack, Dudley arranged for a couple of life rafts to be dropped to the surviving crew, and many years later Dudley met up with the captain or the commander of the U-boat, and they became friends. Sadly, Dudley passed away just last month at the grand age of 101, and his daughter Marilyn is marching in Mildura today, so that's good news.
It's always great to have Chris here, and yeah, well, it's good to mention those people in passing. It's great to look back on achievements and commemorate achievements, but also it's very sad when those grandfathers and great-grandfathers die, and no less sad because they made it to 101. There's Mad Mix Mob.
Allegedly. No. The story goes that Mick was an eccentric OC, Major Mick Jim Needham, OBE, MOD. The company served in PNG in Bougainville, responsible for constructing roads and bridges and support clearing tracks using bulldozers, cleared minefields and booby traps. Many decorations were awarded to several members of that company.
I suspect the nickname is born out of fondness. And eccentric might be a euphemism.
Yes.
And wasn't it great to see those two blokes embracing each other on the sidelines?
Yep.
Or on the side of the march, I should say. '24th Infantry coming through.
So originally raised in 1914 for service in World War I, attached to the 6th Brigade 2nd Division and served in the Gallipoli campaign and the Western Front. In 1921 was re-raised as a Citizens Forces in Melbourne, and in 1927 was known as the Kuyong Regiment. So in 1939 was deployed overseas to New Guinea and the Bougainville campaign. Their battle honours are maintained by the 5th 6th Battalion of the Royal Victoria Regiment.
There's some more photographs, and we've seen that's an increasing trend as well on these marches, to get the frame photographed. Leave them in the frames because we want to protect those old photographs. Just carry those with you. Some years ago that might have been frowned upon. But times are changing in these marches, and people are finding whatever way they can to pay tribute. Now, I do believe that is Bill Holmes and Lyle Butling in that car. And I can tell you that they were mentioned in dispatches for their service by the King. They stormed a Japanese machine gun nest, which was about to fire on a platoon. Bill with his Bren gun and Lyle with a single-shot rifle. They stormed that nest and saved all their mates. And they have been friends ever since. And that is a long, long time. And apparently they don't talk too much about that particular battle that they were involved in. Very rarely do they talk about it, but they love Anzac Day and being together on this day. Part of the Northwest Murray Borderers, which trained originally in Mildura. Spent some time down on the Mornington Peninsula and Balcombe before they were sent into action. "95 years old, both of them, huh? Enlisted when they were 17. And lied about their date, their birth date, on their papers.
4th Field Ambulance. Served in Milne Bay in 1943 before joining 9 Div at the landings of Ley and Trinshard. Then they went on to Nadang. They returned to Australia nearly 2 years after being abroad. And they completed service in Rabaul in 1945. Another striking card for our veterans.
So we should mention another in that sometimes when they're in the cars they go by too quickly. But there is another gentleman that I'd like to mention, in World War II veteran called Sam Kreiser, and he was born in Poland. He moved to Australia. Most of his family was killed in Poland. He moved to Australia just before World War II. Didn't know much English at all, in fact, when he became a part of the Australian Fighting Force. He's 100 years old. He turned 100 earlier this year. He never really wanted to celebrate any of his birthdays, in part because of his family being killed so many years ago. But anyway, his family, as it is now, was able to convince him to have a small party. He was a leading aircraftman, 11 Communications Unit, and he was actually present when there was the surrender of the 2nd Imperial Japanese Army. He managed to bring home a Japanese sword, and he still has that today.
Wow, how did he get that through customs?
Don't know. I don't know, but he was a witness to history and another modest man. And we should really be privileged to be the same march as him today.
The 14th, 32nd. Again, they spent 2 years over in New Guinea and New Britain before coming home, and then the unit being disbanded.
Okay, let's go to James now, who's got a very, very special guest.
World War II veteran Sam Kreiser, you're 100 years old. How did it feel to see the crowds lining St Kilda Road?
I don't feel like 100. I never admitted to my age before, and I'm not admitting it now. My age is just a number anyway. Yeah, I know. I'm happy. It's a good day. It's nice to represent the Air Force. I've got some very good memories way back mateship. Yes, and I'm happy to be alive.
That's Sam, and I just mentioned his service history there before. You can see how modest he is, Michelle. And wonderful, and James is going to have more of those special guests, so stay tuned to hear from them.
I went to a Anzac luncheon last week, and the keynote speaker was Jack Bell, who's an Army veteran at 101, 101 years old, and his key message for the his talk was that compassion, tolerance and respect were things that he felt, witnessed, observed, experienced in his service. And I think those three messages are relevant today as they were back then. So compassion, tolerance and respect. Great message from Jack, thanks.
It is.
I drove him up to Ballarat a couple of weeks ago, Michelle, and a wonderful gentleman.
Isn't he?
He's crystal clear and, yeah, marvellous.
Must be going well if he's giving keynote speeches at 101, hey?
Yeah.
And he didn't want a chair.
Yeah.
He stood up at the podium, didn't have notes.
35, 40 minutes, about that time?
No.
No, okay.
No.
He spoke in Ballarat for about 40 minutes without notes. Incredible.
Well, it could have been. I mean, I was
Yeah.
so captivated with the story, so, yeah.
There you go. It's nice to see people having a chat too at the end of the march. As they come down towards the steps of the Shrine of Remembrance. Having come all that way. You see a lot of smiles too as people catch up. Perhaps this is the only time they catch up with their friends once a year. And that's lovely too to see those photographs. The applause will last several hours and the banners keep coming. And our roving reporter James is out there getting those interviews for you as well. So we hope you're enjoying the coverage this morning. And yes, there is some football gear. And the big match is later today, but that's after. This is the main event. There's those representing the Tank Attack Regiment. The dawn service was well attended this morning. If you missed that, 25,000 people. It's an estimate, of course. And it was well attended. The Premier gave the guest speech this morning. He talked about his impressions of Anzac Day and how important it is to us all. And I thought the young student Angus Hattie's recitation of In Flanders Fields was one of the highlights this morning as well. Perfectly recited. From the Old Sappers Association, the banner comes through.
You feel that younger generations are keeping the spirit alive, the Anzac spirit alive?
Well, they're keeping the spirit alive, but they're backing the country up.
Yes, it's James getting the interviews out for you. We'll throw back to James a little bit later, shall we? And those cars are on hand for anyone who wants to ride in those and doesn't feel they could make it all the way along. So, and the organisers of the march do a great job in just making sure everyone's comfortable and enough space along the way as well, and gets due recognition, which is the most important thing. Here comes the youngest band in the march.
They're from Caulfield.
It's Caulfield South Primary School.
They're doing well. That's how they run assembly on Friday afternoons. Outstanding achievement. Well done to all their teachers too. I love the yellow shoes.
26th Infantry Battalion. Originally saw service with the 7th Brigade in Gallipoli, and then in mid-16 the Western Front. but then reassigned to the 11th Brigade and was sent to the Dutch East Indies in 1943, and then later in Bougainville in 45. After the war, they were used to guard the Japanese prisoners on Rabaul, remaining there until March 1946, when they returned to Australia and were disbanded.
Purple Devils coming through. And followed by the 20th Pioneer Battalion.
Heavy ACAC Association. A searchlight battery.
And that's a novel way of doing
Yeah,
paying
t-shirts.
tribute too. Putting it your tie or your t-shirt. I guess that saves holding one of those heavy frames all the way.
2946. Got a service in the Pacific.
Chris, some of your friends up there.
Yes, it's just about on time, Paul, I think. And as you can see, the formation of wind shields and CT4 and a Harvard aircraft at the rear. Most of those aircraft are from the RAF Museum at Point Cook.
Yeah. We had the Avalon Air Show recently too, with the old and the new. Many thousands of people going to have a look at that.
A very hot day.
It was a hot day when I was there, that's for sure.
It was 40 degrees.
There they are again.
What's their instructions, Chris?
So they're flying from north to south in the first pass, and they'll be coming back again another pass from east to west. So, tight formation there, led by Squadron Leader Graham McCoy and the lead aircraft, CT4. The museum is always worth a visit. If you haven't been there before, for the viewers, it's a magnificent display. I was there just a week or so ago, and it seems to get better every time I go.
You climb in the cockpit?
Not quite.
You can see all those marvellous planes. We'll hear more from Chris later when we see the Air Force come through and we can see another flyby. Let's go to James now. Over to you, mate.
Paul, I'm with our guest commentator for the Navy, Dr. John Carroll. John, you've been involved in our broadcasts for several years now. What do you take away from today's march?
A lot of fond memories. Mateship that we had when we were at sea. The conditions of service, the good and the bad, and that's about it. It's one of those things that's always there. I came from a Navy family. My father served in Dems and my uncle served on Canberra. So, yeah, there's a naval tradition there, and traditions are always good to maintain. I don't think I could get my son to go back in the Navy, but no, the Navy's always been good to me.
Thanks, John. And John's been good to us too at the ABC, being on hand to give us his commentary in the last few years. There you go. There's the face behind the voice. And Chris, those planes, is that the east or west?
It's their last flyby here, I think, Paul, and they go on to overfly a couple of other commemorations around Melbourne on their way back home to Point Cook.
Where would those be? In different, just different regional places, and I'll have a map and just.
Yes, it's all pre-organised and pre-planned.
That's a nice way to spend the morning, you would think.
Be, yes, most enjoyable. Good day for it too.
How close can you get in those formations?
Oh, the closer the better, actually. It's easier to fly when you're close.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm. into a fair bit of practice, I think, to make sure they don't lose their formation flying skills. So it's good to hear.
Yeah, absolute experts. Doesn't look easy.
Lots of practice.
There's a veteran coming through with some medals there and plenty of help. And some girls. Good on you, girls. Well done. No doubt supporting one of their grandparents. Or great-grandparents. I just want to remind people, by the way, if you've got a special connection to the march, you might even want to take a look at this entire march. Well, it's going to be available on iView from later on today. And if you want to find out how to purchase some digital copies of Anzac Day marches, you can call the toll-free number 1300 650 587. And we'll remind you of that a little bit later on as well. But you can get it on iView. So if you've been to one of your local services this morning and you missed the start, that's okay. You can watch it back a little bit later. Might even see one of your family or friends in the march.
13th Armoured Regiment there, originally a light horse regiment and recruited from Gippsland. Saw service in the First World War on the Western Front. The Royal Australian Signals Association. So on the 1st of January 1925, the Australian Corps of Signals was formed. It became the evolution of the Australian Corps of Signals, which reached a total strength of 24,000 men during World War II. Brigadier Keith Colwell, the patron of the association and former Chief Marshal of the Anzac Day March in Melbourne, sadly passed away last year.
Our best wishes to his family. There you go, Chris. Any problems with the dumping of the fuel out the back?
No,
there,
that's
mate?
just
okay?
created by injecting oil into the exhaust.
Yeah.
So that's
So that's all okay?
That's all they do. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
My car's doing the same thing at the moment. It's not okay.
Not okay, no.
Look at that great old photograph there.
General Transport.
That's a youngster with all three, the slouch hat, the medal and the photograph. If someone gets a photo of her and she can keep that for a long time. Fair bit of power in that flyover too. I could feel that shaking in our commentary box here.
It's a great sound, isn't it, Paul? Takes me back about 60 years.
Does it?
Yeah. I did my initial training on the WWII aircraft, and it's a magnificent training vehicle.
Yeah. Makes you want to go back up there?
Mm.
John, what do you think about the kids getting out there and marching? And we know you're a traditionalist and you just said it on air.
You're going to hold me to it, eh? No, I think it's where it's safe to do so. And they're under parental guidance.
Yeah.
I see no harm in it.
Well, it's changed, hasn't it, the march? I mean, you may have made a case 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago.
Yes.
But with the dwindling numbers of veterans from World War II, do you think it's the march is better served by having those young people there?
In a way, we won't all none of us are here forever. And, tradition such as the Anzac Day parade has got to be carried on by somebody.
Yeah, I think there's a nice balance there anyway. And let's go down to hear from James, who's got another guest.
It must be heartening to see the crowds lining St Kilda Road.
I just said to the driver of the car that came down here, and it's the biggest crowd I've seen down here and since the big one in 46, where everybody was home.
And yeah, nice to hear from Alf this morning and watch him go past on the march. There's the Navy band.
Navy band again, leading the Air Force.
And the Air Force coming in behind, Chris.
We saw the uniform contingent go through a short while ago, Paul, and I see the Air Force Association coming through with on the screen now is Max McGregor, who's the president of the Victorian Division. And their Vice Marshal Pete Scully there with the cap. Peter's flown all the way from Tasmania, Hobart, to be with us today.
Oh, great.
Peter had a long career in the Air Force, flying fighter aircraft from Vampire to Mirage. Oh, perfect timing with some more flypasts. Here come the Vietnam veterans. They've been led today by Mr. Jeff Rose, who's a long-term member of our committee. They're followed by the RAF Police. We normally have a lunch with the RAF Police after the march. They're joining us again today. And 21 Squadron Association just marching through there.
You're seeing lots of familiar faces down there, Chris?
Not just yet. I think I'll probably pick up a few as they come through. There's 10 Squadron flying that Sunderland flying boat we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Should be followed very shortly, I think, by 461 Squadron. There it is. As you can see, they operated in the Bay of Biscay, over the Atlantic, and also up in the Shetland Islands.
Just rounding the corner there at Anzac Avenue and heading up towards the Shrine of Remembrance. They turn around on the steps. That's the view they have down along the skyline of Melbourne. Let's go to James now. Over to you.
World War II veteran Keith Hearn, how does it feel to see so many people here today?
It gives you a very, very warm feeling to see that people still turn up and remember.
What does mateship and the Anzac spirit mean to you all these years on?
When you're in the army and you're in a section or a platoon, you have mates. And they would risk their life for you. And anybody that's never had mateship, like as in the services, would not know what life's about.
Strong words from Keith there. He was wounded in action by a Japanese grenade during the battle, and during one of those battles spent his 20th birthday recuperating in a field hospital, and was a butcher before enlisting, and yes, spent his youth there overseas representing Australia, fighting for Australia. And James speaking to some of those World War II veterans, the few that are able to be here today. So it's great to hear from them. And that's a wonderful scene there of the shrine.
magnificent place. If you haven't been here, by the way, you really should come down and have a look. Great exhibitions there, and some John ambulance medical staff there standing by just in case they're needed. As we continue to see representatives and commemorations for the Air Force. And Chris Hudnut is our special commentator here on the Air Force as well.
It's 458 Squadron there, Paul, and that was formed in Australia under the Empire Air Training Scheme. And they flew various versions of the Vickers Wellington bombers, first in Europe and with Bomber Command, and later in the Middle East. Over 11,000 of those aircraft, the Vickers Wellington, were built. That's an amazing number. Carried a crew of 6. And the squadron relocated to Egypt and began a new life attacking ships and submarines in 1942. This was the largest and longest serving of the Australian squadrons in Bomber Command. The squadron set numerous operational records but suffered terrible losses. And for a squadron with about 200 members in the establishment, I think they lost about 1,000 in combat deaths. Tremendous number of people were lost. The squadron flew its last sortie over Germany on Anzac Day 1945. Targeted the mountain retreat of Adolf Hitler. The Royal Air Forces Association. The aim of that association was to dedicated to the welfare of serving and ex-servicing RAF personnel, RAF personnel. There's a big membership worldwide of over 60,000 people, so it's quite a big organisation.
I think when we read about and learn about the missions of those in the Air Force, it's unimaginable. What they did in war.
And just kept going back night after night and did the same thing again.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I mean, I guess it's the same if you're on ground or at sea or in the air, but the uncertainty of taking off and having your orders and not knowing what was going to happen then, or who was waiting for you.
Yep, who was going to come back and who was not.
Also, Chris, I imagine that readjusting to normal life after being a pilot must be quite difficult, given the thrills that are involved.
Yes, and I think that's why a lot of these associations sort of became established after the war to enable guys to get together and enjoy each other's company again.
Talk to the only other people that would know what you're up
against.
The experience was.
Yep.
Well, that's exactly what Anzac Day is all about, isn't it? Doesn't matter where you served or how you served, but to reconnect with those people.
Absolutely.
If you're lucky enough. And talk about what you went through.
Yeah. The Old Bods Association, these were Australian people who were serving overseas in the RAF. So they've got their own organisation and association to meet up with.
Yeah, that's great. Some youngsters there as well, some relatives being involved. And as I mentioned earlier, when I talked about the Rats of Tobruk, there is a discussion there about what to do with associations when there are no veterans left. The Rats of Tobruk, in Victoria, they've decided to go on with the descendants, but in other places not. Let's go down and hear from James.
Army Cadet Charlotte Bradstreet, how does it feel to be here today?
It's a great experience to be a part of something so big and yeah, be here for everyone who served in wars, as yeah, it's such a big day for everyone.
Yes, it is. And, Michelle, it's good to hear from those youngsters, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good to see the young cadets. They're so motivated, and their thirst for knowledge and continuing on that commemorative spirit is amazing.
And they're just setting out really on their careers. All that anticipation that brings. I see some more descendants and family members. Photographs and poppies and poppy scarves. And medals. So many medals.
I just saw a little while ago the Pathfinder banner go past, Paul, and in fact the Pathfinders were an elite group from Bomber Command. In fact, was established by an Australian fellow called Group Captain Don Bennett, who was brought up in somewhere in Victoria, I think, and joined the RAF in 1930. So, yes, a bit of history there.
Yeah. It's great to get that history from all our special commentators, and James has been interviewing our commentators this morning as well, so you can learn a bit more about them. Here's James with Michelle.
Colonel Michelle Campbell, of course, behind us, the magnificent Shrine of Remembrance. Tell me about your connection to it.
Hi, James. So I'm on the board of trustees at the Shrine of Remembrance, and it's got a special place for me. I graduated from Monash University and also Monash University Regiment, so General Sir John Monash, who was an advocate for the shrine and supervised its construction, great connection, was also commanding officer of Melbourne University Regiment, and he served with that regiment, and he was an honorary colonel for many, many years. And indeed, when I used to sit at my desk, it was his desk originally, so great connection with the great man.
Yeah, great to have Michelle here as well, as part of our commemorative team at the ABC. Now, I should just map out the rest of our coverage for you very, very briefly. The march here might end a little bit earlier than it usually does. If so, we'll take in some commemorative services from the nation's capital in Canberra, and later on we'll of course cross to Gallipoli and get a live broadcast of the dawn service there. It's 104th anniversary of the landing at Anzac Cove. And from Turkey, then we'll take you to France and the dawn service from Villers-Bretonneux. So you won't miss a thing on the ABC today. And now you're seeing the sun shining on the Melbourne March, as we see those banners still coming through. Some famous names, and the Air Force continues to be remembered and commemorated and celebrated here today, Chris.
Yeah, we just saw the airfield construction squadrons, mobile works units go through before. They did a lot of good work in being very close to the front line of actions, particularly in the Southwest Pacific area, and constructed a lot of airfields, a lot of buildings associated with the aerodromes, and a lot of good works. It's number 5, I think, Airfield Construction Squadron. Colloquially known as the Flying Shovels.
Why is that, Chris?
Oh, because I guess they had a lot of shovels and a lot of digging to do to put down runways and other buildings. Rough radar units, we saw the banner just a little while ago. They operated under extreme secrecy to serve the Air Force during the war, and something like about 140 radar stations, I think, and 6,000 personnel spread around the coastline and across New Guinea and Borneo and the islands of the Southwest Pacific area. Often set up in remote and inhospitable places in the advance of the major campaigns.
And just then we saw in the background, now we're seeing them walking up towards the shrine. That's a veteran. who has called upon the driver to stop. I want to get out and walk and make the last part of the parade on foot. Magnificent sight there. And getting the applause of all the people lined up. And just beyond there is the shrine and people sitting in seats, hundreds of people sitting in seats about to give him a big round of applause. Great stuff. It's a bit of a steep hill there too. It doesn't quite look like that on your screens, but it's a steep rise. Another flyover. You can hear that,
Yes,
Chris?
I think the roulets from East Sale, which are just about on time.
Beautiful. We'll show you those as they fly over again. Good morning to you, sir. The training schools in there?
Yes, looking training schools, a whole range of areas and subjects covered. Scattered all around Victoria, in fact all around Australia.
And Gippsland is a big base, isn't it?
East Sale, it certainly is.
And they're at
yes,
Sale, yeah.
Yep.
Anyone who lives down there would know that those sounds very well. Where did you train, Chris?
Mainly at Point Cook. Did my initial training there. I went back for a few years as a flight instructor at Point Cook and did some training at Sale as well, with the Central Flying School there.
There's one of the veterans getting a ride and entertaining people along the way too.
Very proud warrant officer.
Big crowd here today, and they're enjoying you. To see the short sleeves, that's and the shorts in the background there. It's not always the case on Anzac Day. It's usually a bit chilly by this time of year, but it's been a balmy build-up to Anzac Day. And yes, nice and warm, but also a bit too dry across the country. Let's stop in with James again and see who he's got for us to chat to.
World War II veteran Frank Sims, how does it feel to be here today with your granddaughter?
Fantastic. Just great to get out and be able to march with them, and it brings back a lot of memories.
It must be nice to be alongside your grandfather.
Yeah, it's really special and really overwhelming, actually. Yeah, it's wonderful. I felt very lucky to be able to march with your group, Grandpa.
Down from Canberra.
Yeah, we're from Canberra, so we came from Canberra.
Very appreciative, Frank there, and great to see him. Looking as fit as a fiddle. Blue skies now over the Shrine of Remembrance, and we'll be having some special ceremonies a little later on too. Not the same order this morning, but the wreath laying ceremonies. Just slightly changed things up in an earlier march, and hasn't caught anyone off guard, Michelle, because some people stayed after the dawn service and are still here.
Yeah, there's a decision that to put the official wreath laying at the end of the march, sort of a little bit more respectful, and the VIP's dignitaries are here anyway, so it made sense, and it allowed also the shrine staff to prepare this area around the shrine for the march without all the general public potentially tripping over cords or whatnot. So, yeah, just a bit of decompression.
Yeah. Also, there's usually about at least 1,000 people go through the shrine, and it takes time for those people to disperse and come back around. So, a well-organised event here. there, special banners for the descendants. And you'll see some very old banners come through there as part of the World War I contingent. Of course, some special anniversaries have gone by in the last couple of years. Perhaps none bigger than in 2015, when there was the 100-year anniversary of the landing of Anzac Cove. But each year, significant battles have had their anniversaries. And from World War II and Vietnam as well.
2 years' time, Paul, 2021 will be the 100th anniversary of the formation of the Australian Air Force, so that'll be a big year.
Oh, wow, great.
Look forward to that.
You have claims on leading the march, I think, there, Chris.
I think they probably will, yes, we're hoping so.
And there you go, the light horse going through. Maga's boys. And I urge anyone out there who is perhaps just getting connected with some sort of history and wanting to know a bit more about your family. If you've been in Australia for several generations, I bet you will unearth some astounding fact about one of your family members who was serving Australia in World War I. If you go back far enough, you'll find someone. Some great uncle somewhere, and there's all documentation. You can do those searches. It's quite easy now too. You go through the different services and find out about your family history. You'll understand why these people are turning out today to walk as descendants of World War I veterans, and why the banners are still there. And well cared for 12 months around as well, just to make it to Anzac Day. What do you think, Chris? Is it worth keeping those banners and marching for World War I veterans?
I think so, Paul.
For
yes.
decades to come?
Personally, I think so, yeah. And there's so many of them. I think it's good to see them all being grouped together with their descendants and keeping alive that history, going way, way back.
Well, it hasn't dropped away, and that's what will happen with the World War II descendants as well.
Mm-hmm.
They'll keep turning up. And as somebody said before, it's the ultimate sign of respect.
And certainly a number of our units, regiments, battalions from the First World War have battle honours, and they're recorded on their colours. There's a number of colours being laid up in the crypt in the shrine. So to preserve the history, it's great that these associations and the descendants keep that memory and that history alive.
You think the shrine is a perfect place for people to start if they want to look back at the family tree and discover their service history within family?
I think the Australian War Memorial has the history and the support to research that. So shrine can point them in the right direction for that.
Jump online for that.
Of course, the Minister's announcement yesterday about digitising all the Second World War records.
Yeah.
I think he stated that there were 13 kilometres of paper records.
Yeah.
What an incredible task, millions of dollars to digitise those records, but then that'll be accessible to anybody from around the world.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. It's essential, actually. And they've done them with the old newspapers from 150 years ago. You can, with 2 clicks of your mouse, you can read a newspaper from then. So why shouldn't you be able to access those war records, those service records?
Well, you can for the First World War, and we're about to embark on the Second World War, so that's great.
Yeah, fantastic. There's the 14th, we mentioned the second 14th before. And the same colours there. And quite a strong showing there battalion. That's nice.
The second, fourth, they used the Matilda tanks in the WWII campaign.
Seeing the Gallipoli name there. From Egypt to Gallipoli, and on to France and Belgium. Of course, if we're still having the commemorations there at Anzac Cove, you'll watch that on the ABC a little bit later on. And tight security, of course, around this year's service, as always, but perhaps even tighter, and some tight measures there because of what we've seen going on overseas in recent times. There we go, the descendants of the Boer War. One step further back in time.
The Boer War, the contingent consisted of the 1st Victorian Mounted Rifles, 2nd Victorian Mounted Rifles, the 3rd Bushmans, 4th Imperial Bushmen, and the 5th Mounted Rifles. There was the Scottish Horse Recruits, the 2nd Battalion Australian Commonwealth Horse, Commonwealth Army Medical Corps, and the 4th Battalion Australian Commonwealth Horse.
Yes, fighting for the Empire. Back in the Boer War. Quite interesting to look back at those militia as they were back then as well. Dotted around the countryside. I know there was one down in Langwarrin long before it became an extended suburb of Melbourne. Now, you can't see this, viewers, but you might all recognise the name John Fane, who is just wandering in front of our commentary box there, and he's getting a few pats on the back. John Fane's indicated that he's going to hang up the microphone and not be leading that same program that he's led for decades. And I know that one of his favourite days in the calendar is being here to have his radio show and cover the Anzac Day march, and he's just posing for photographs there as well, so it's quite a moment for him and his listeners, because everyone knows John's attachment to the day.
It's sorely missed by many Melburnians.
Yes, well said, Chris. I agree with you. Changing of the guard there for ABC Radio. Yes. So well done to John Fane. Thank you very much.
So we have our Commonwealth Forces on screen, led by the British Veterans Association, the British Household Division, the Royal Marines and Airborne Division. And I think we're coming up to the Dunkirk Veterans. And I think what we're seeing actually on screen is the Scottish Veterans descendants, marked by those tartans. Don't they look terrific?
Yeah, the kids look great.
There's a Campbell tartan.
I was well into my 30s before I first put on a kilt, and I regretted I didn't do it earlier. Very comfortable.
Maltese veteran descendants.
Yeah, I think this is one of the highlights of the march, in fact, where we have people who have come to Australia marching for their countries, but also in unison with the Australian servicemen and women. It's very, very strong communities in Melbourne representing their former nations, and they always turn out. It's great to see them here.
Coming into view, we have the Royal Gurkha Rifles. People were recruited from Nepal, which was a dependent territory of the United Kingdom. a member of the Commonwealth. The motto, better to die than to live a coward. So originally from the 6th Queen Elizabeth's own Gurkha rifles from the British India Army, and was raised in 1817 as part of the British East India Company. 1947, the regiment was only one of 4 Gurkha regiments to be transferred to the British Army, and continued up until 1994 when it was all amalgamated to the Royal Gurkha Rifles.
There's a South African veterans putting in a late bid for best formation.
Best dressed too, I think.
Yeah,
Very smart.
And they look great. Outstanding, a great turnout too.
Yeah. The Rhodesian ex-services, you see Boer War, World War I, II, and so on.
A woman either streaming it live or recording it for posterity.
Republic of Vietnam.
Yes. You spoke earlier about those early Vietnam veterans heading over there and working with the South Vietnamese. Strong, strong bonds there. That's quite a showing there from the Vietnamese veterans, and such talk about strong communities, such strong communities within Melbourne as well. A real feature of life in Victoria, in fact. All of these people got special plans today as well after the march. They will at some stage leave here and go and connect over lunch to share their own stories.
It's the Scotch College Pipes and Drums.
With a nice long history too.
Our Ceylon veterans.
Very solemn occasion, very solemn time for all of those people.
Yeah.
Thoughts are with them too. Here come the Indian veterans.
Indian veterans. They fought alongside the Anzacs in Gallipoli. It was thought to be around 5,000 Indian troops that served in Gallipoli. About 1,600 were killed. Historian Peter Stanley says in recent research at the National Archives of India shows the degree of Indian involvement was higher than initially thought.
I saw the Dutch coming through there, and I'm not a lip reader, but she said that's my dad. How's the form, Michelle?
Pretty good. They were all very serious.
They were.
But concentrating and being very professional.
Good on them. Is the Melbourne Youth Orchestras?
And they're leading the Allies contingent. You can see just behind them there's the first one, the French veterans.
French with the distinctive headwear.
So the French veterans comprise the Foreign Legion, the Air Force and the Navy.
Some impressive medals there as well. Behind the French we have the Polish. Polish veterans. We mentioned Sam Kryzer, one of our World War II veterans earlier. I saw him and heard from him, and yes, born in Poland and lost most of his family, and was able to make it to Australia. Here's the Polish contingent now. About a big part of Melbourne, huh?
The Greek veterans, the Hellenic RSL sub-branch was founded in the 1970s. There's Ken Sirigotis, works for our legacy and does some tremendous work supporting our widows and descendants. A lot of community programs, so very active in that space.
Yeah.
Well done, Ken.
Yeah, that's worth a mention. We should mention legacy every time, and still working, still providing that support. And so many Greeks came to Australia and settled in Melbourne in the 50s and 60s, and another really, really strong, vibrant part of Melbourne. And I think the contingents of those international veterans, to me, seems to be the strongest I've seen in the last couple of years. There's a couple of veterans there in the convertibles. Okay to be in a convertible today, not a drop of rain. In fact, that's some of the prize vehicles. And see, here's veterans, descendants of veterans from the ex-Soviet Union now. Fantastic.
I think they're liking these cars.
Well, they're nice, those ones, aren't they?
Didn't realise we had so many Mustangs in Melbourne.
Yes. I dare say, Mustangs done well to provide those. And the RACV is organising all the vehicles, so well done to them. And here come the Turkish veterans.
So the Turkish sub-branch of the RSL was founded on the 14th of November 1996. Now the banner that you just saw quotes Ataturk's famous words inscribed at Anzac Cove. And they say, those heroes that shed their blood and lost their lives, you are now you are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. Therefore rest in peace. There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Mehmets. To us, where they lie, side by side here in this country of ours, you, the mothers who sent their sons from faraway countries, wipe away your tears. Your sons are now lying in our bosom and are in peace. After having lost their lives on this land, they have become our sons as well.
And in just over an hour, we'll be crossing to Gallipoli for that live broadcast of the dawn service at Anzac Cove. So stay with us for that.
Our Italian veterans. Distinctive headdress. Very proud Chinese veteran descendants.
Just to remind you, if you're just tuning in, you want to watch this march later, it's going to be on iView, so you won't have to miss it, and you can tune back in and look for some loved ones who might have been in the march if you've been out at your local services. We're getting towards the end of the march now. It's earlier today. Just reminding you, we did start a little bit earlier, and there's been a change in the proceedings. So the wreath laying ceremony and the dignitaries and the part that they will play in the Shrine of Remembrance is coming after the march and not before. So that's the reason the march started just a little bit earlier. So that means we'll finish a bit earlier. Usually we see the march finish at about 12:30, but it's going to be earlier today. And that'll give us an opportunity to show a commemorative service in Canberra. But we will be crossing overseas, and we'll go to our experts and our commentators who are overseeing the broadcast at Anzac Cove, and then of course from Turkey we'll go to France. There's Villas Bretonneux, and that is a special place, of course, in the history of Australia. As we see the last of the march come through, and special thanks, by the way, for our special commentators. Thank you all for being here again. We've got to see you this time because James interviewed you as well, and
it's been a pleasure, Paul.
That'll be good. That might have been from the viewers saying, can we see more of your special commentators, not just hear from them? So there you go. It's another service we provide. It's been a good march, don't you think?
It certainly has, yeah.
There's still a few to come through. Don't turn off yet. There's the High Street Youth Band coming through. And plenty of playing on the way up. A little bit tired, the kids. They can put their feet up this afternoon. Another Army Cadet unit coming through. And we've got a special guest for you now. James has got the Lord Mayor.
I'm with Melbourne's Lord Mayor, Sally Capp. Sally, as you're sitting there watching the marches go by, what's going through your mind?
Well, look, obviously, from my perspective, I haven't needed to fight in a war, and I feel so grateful for everybody that has. I also recognise that, marches like these are so important to keep remembering those who have and those that still are serving in our Defence Forces, and a great way for family also to get involved in showing that respect. So we see lots of kids marching as well, which I think is wonderful, because we need to keep these stories alive and we need to keep these traditions going, and the march is really important for all of those reasons.
Sally Capp down there speaking to James. Of course, the Lord Mayor will join the Governor, Linda Dessau, and the Premier, Daniel Andrews, as well, in those ceremonies to come. Daniel Andrews was the guest speaker at the dawn service this morning and was given that honour and relished the opportunity to talk about what Anzac Day meant to him and his family and the rest of Victoria.
So here we have Monterey College from Hamilton in our Western District. The band, this is their second time through, I think, and this is their cadet unit.
Is that a boarding school?
Yes. Yeah, Hamilton have 2 boarding schools.
Yes, they're young cadets, like years maybe 7 and 8. Maybe a couple a bit older. It's the Girl Guides, always represented very well on this occasion, and helping with the Scouts to lift those banners, and keep us all informed of the great names of the past.
You've done a great job today, as always.
One more Air Force banner there, Chris.
Yeah, I don't know how they managed to get so far behind.
Okay, stand up, mate.
I think that's probably the reason. Yeah.
What
They were
about
told at the briefing if they turned up late, they'd go last.
Oh, we don't want to make assumptions. Maybe they were thrilled by the flyover or just got
It's good to see them here.
waylaid. Now, all of these people, of course, here are volunteering their time to just making sure that this special event goes really well.
And a big thank you to the parents of the Scouts, Guides and Cadets. Without your support, of course, the kids couldn't be here supporting all the veterans. So thanks to all the parents, teachers and drivers
And everyone that's been cooking the food that we smell when we arrive, and those tents lining St Kilda Road in the gunfire breakfast.
I believe they were the cooks from HMAS Cerberus.
Were they?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can see behind the Vermont Secondary College Band, we have the group of marshals. So these are the guys that have coordinated, prepared and delivered a fantastic march today. It was led by Colonel Jason Cook. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes leading up to this in the last 6 weeks. So thank you to everybody that's contributed.
Yeah, I agree with that. They do a great job. It's such a moving thing too, isn't it, the march, because of availability and who might be here, who needs support. There's so much that goes into it. All the bands you see, all the kids, all the different schools, they have to coordinate. Those banner bearers. Doing a great job, and well done to all of the people that have turned up early and showed their appreciation. And the fold-out chairs you can see there in the background.
It's Caulfield South Primary again.
Your favourite yellow shoes, Paul?
I like them. They present really well. And I can see that they're a bit more weary than the last time they went through. Well, I've got kids about that age and I know that look. They've done a terrific job and they've earned a big rest this afternoon. And they've got a story to tell now. I bet you everyone wants to be in the band, but that's good. Look great, and not to mention the police you can see behind you. They're of course looking after security for this event. Security is critical, and they were fantastic. They've got a really strong presence at the dawn service, and they keep up that job all day. You can see some parents just near the flame, which you'll see on your left there. And there you go, on that wonderful shot of Melbourne. That brings to an end our telecast of the Anzac Day March here in Melbourne. And as I've been explaining, it's come to an end earlier than expected, but those were a change in scheduling more than anything. I'll take this opportunity just to remind you that we're going to go to a commemorative service in the nation's capital. We'll also need to remind you that we're going to bring you live the Gallipoli dawn service at 12:30, and Villas Bretonneux will follow that, and then there'll be another commemorative service that we're going to show you at just before 3 o'clock. We thank you for joining us today, and have a really good Anzac Day.
Thanks, Speaker.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with the completion of the 2019 Anzac March, a colourful and commemorative march, congratulations to all participants, the organisers, and to you, the public of Victoria, for attending the Shrine of Remembrance today. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the official wreath laying and commemoration ceremony for Anzac Day. On the forecourt are the wreath layers gathering, but it is important for me to say that the Governor of Victoria did lay a wreath this morning during the dawn service in the Inner Sanctum Sanctuary on behalf of the people of Victoria. With our official party assembled, the first group to step off for the wreath laying ceremony representing the RSL is Dr. Robert Webster, State President, the Chairman of the Shrine of Remembrance Trustees, Air Vice Marshal Christopher Spence, and the City of Melbourne, the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor, Sally Capp. Representing the Australian Defence Force, Navy, Army, Air Force, Major General Andrew Bottrell, Commodore Justin Jones, and Air Commodore Glenn Braz. Representing New Zealand, Ms. Vanessa O'Neill, Consul General of New Zealand, accompanied by the New Zealand Military Attaché, Wing Commander Cameron Brownlee. Representing Great Britain is the Consul General, Mr. Christopher Holtby. Representing the state and federal governments are the Honourable James Merlino, Acting Premier, and Senator the Honourable Mitch Fifield.
Welcome back to our Victorian viewers for the commemorative service here at the Shrine of Remembrance. Welcome back to our Victorian viewers for the commemorative service here at the Shrine of Remembrance. And that's where we leave the commemorative service at Melbourne's Shrine of Remembrance. Thanks for watching. Good afternoon.
Melbourne Legacy, represented by Legatee Hugh Roberton. Carry On, represented by Mr Clive Usher. War Widows Guild of Victoria, represented by Mrs Wendy Charlton. And Freemasons Victoria, represented by Grandmaster Keith Murray. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, visitors from around Victoria, the 2019 Anzac Day commemoration ceremony will now commence. I invite Dr. Robert Webster, President of the RSL, to step to the lectern.
Step to the lectern shortly.
Yeah.
Now I can start. Her Excellency the Honourable Linda Dessau, Governor of Victoria, Mr Anthony Howard, distinguished guests, veterans, ladies and gentlemen, and all the boys and girls in the crowd, I hope you've learnt something this morning. Welcome to the commemoration ceremony. During the Anzac period, we don't just remember those events of 104 years ago. We also remember the century of sacrifice and service since that fateful day at Gallipoli. Since Federation, nearly 2 million people have worn the various uniforms of the Australian Defence Force. And of those, more than 920,000 served overseas. The War Memorial tells us 102,804 people have died and more than 300,000 been injured, wounded or gassed. In both world wars, the impact on our small nation of the horrific losses of our best was profound, because our communities lost so much of the future talent of the country. The arts, the sciences, agriculture, industry, sport, politics, and indeed fathers and future fathers of happy, well cared for families. Today, with the leaders of the march, we've honoured the memory of those who fought in World War II. 2019 is the 80th anniversary of the commencement of that war. The march leaders were Robert Spencer Jevons of the Royal Australian Navy, Keith Hearn, who served with the 2nd 31st Battalion representing the Army, and centenarian Sam Kreiser, who witnessed the signing of the Japanese surrender at Morotai representing the Royal Australian Air Force. We thank them for their service during that conflict and their work since, helping to build this great nation of ours. In World War II, more than 990,000 Australians enlisted. More than 396,000 of them served overseas. And Australia suffered nearly 40,000 dead and 67,000 wounded. In recent days, we've been reminded of how close war came to us here. The discovery of the wreck of the SS Iron Castle, a merchant ship, was recently found in water 700 metres deep, about 70 kilometres south-southwest of Gabo Island, at the eastern end of Bass Strait. She was one of the 4 Australian merchant ships sunk in Bass Strait during the Second World War. The ship was sunk by a torpedo from a Japanese submarine at dusk on the 4th of June 1942. The ship sank within 60 seconds, and 38 members of the merchant marine were taken to their death. At the same time, in 1942, an aircraft of the Japanese Navy did a circumnavigation of Port Phillip Bay. The war came to Victoria. But we remember all of those men and women who fought and died for our freedom, and they've achieved that freedom. And we need to maintain the freedoms that they so sorely won. A letter to the editor in our current RSL magazine sums up in 4 words the traits developed and shown during World War time. The words are courage, endurance, sacrifice and mateship. The writer of the letter, in talking about his father, says, and I quote, "My dad said everyone who served had courage. Everyone endured. Everyone made sacrifices, including all of those who kept the home fires burning. But the thing that carried the day was mateship. Knowing that your mate would be by your side when things were bad was one of the prime reasons for success in war. I would add another word to that list: respect. The respect for each other during service and respect for all who have worn the uniform of the Australian Defence Forces over the last century. Our ceremony begins today with the hymn, "O God, our help in ages past." Would you please remain standing and join with me in the Lord's Prayer? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. If you please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I now invite the Governor of Victoria, Her Excellency the Honourable Linda Dessau, to speak. Sorry, ma'am.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. The Honourable James Merlino, Acting Premier, Senator the Honourable Mitch Fifield, representing the Prime Minister, the Honourable Robin Scott, Minister for Veterans, the Honourable David Davis, representing the Leader of the Victorian Opposition, the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor Sally Capp, Mr Graham Ashton, Chief Commissioner of Victoria Police, Air Vice Marshal Chris Spence, Chair of the Shrine of Trustees, Dr Robert Webster, State President, and members of the RSL Victorian branch, and members of other ex-service organisations, leaders and members of the Australian Defence Force, members of the Consular Corps, veterans, those serving, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls. I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we're gathering and by paying my respects to their elders past and present and to any elders who are here with us this afternoon. As we come together at our shrine today for the Anzac Day commemoration, I'm conscious that we are a mixed group gathered here. Amongst us are veterans and current Australian Defence Force personnel who have seen active duty, fighting or contributing as peacekeepers in trouble spots around the world in service of our country. Amongst us are those who have lost family, friends and colleagues whilst on duty in different corners of the world. And otherwise, there are thousands of Victorians from all different parts of our state, from different walks of life, from different backgrounds and of different ages. Victorians, respectful and good-hearted people, people who simply choose to be here on this important day. What we share as we gather here together is our understanding of how very much this day matters, why this shrine matters, why we think it's so important to look back through history to events some more than 100 years ago. It's not just by chance that we gather to remember here at this Shrine of Remembrance, specifically created to commemorate those who gave so much in the First World War. Of course, soon enough it was to remember those lost in another world war and in other wars and battles and peacekeeping operations since. Across Australia today, large numbers of people will also come together at other shrines and memorials, because this day, Anzac Day, is important to us all. It commemorates the landing on 25 April 1915 of Australian and New Zealand troops on the Gallipoli Peninsula. So many young men, so far away from home, such a hard battle. But like the shrine, the remembrances of Anzac Day now also extend to the many brave men and women who have served since the Anzacs all those years ago. It commemorates the hardships of their service, the extensive injuries suffered by so many, and the tragic loss of so many lives. It commemorates the courage, the endurance, and the care for each other amongst our troops. It really doesn't matter whether it was 100 years ago or just yesterday. The sacrifices that they made are ageless. We do not forget just because it was not in our lifetime or on our doorstep. By coming together today, we show our shared understanding of why history matters, that it helps explain what shapes our lives today, and it helps us, particularly you, our young people here, our future leaders, to learn how you want to shape our future. And by coming together today, we show our shared appreciation for all those who have served to keep us safe. Gratitude for what they have given to the people in distant countries in which they served, for what they gave to our grandparents and parents, and for what they've given to each one of us today. We are all original Australians, long-time and more recently arrived Australians. We are all the beneficiaries of the democracy, the freedoms and the stability that they have helped to secure. As the years pass, it could become harder to remember. The immediacy of events is often overcome by time. The voices of first-hand accounts are, in some instances, just a whisper now. Significant anniversaries come and fade away. But if we forget, We dishonour what our brave ADF men and women have given to us. If we forget, we discourage others from their own contributions. And if we forget, there is a greater chance that we will never learn from history's events, the lives lost in and the heartache of war. And so, in coming together in this reflective setting on this special day, we think of all of those who have served. We think of and wish for the safety of all those who are on active service right now, and we ensure that we never forget.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now invite Mr. Peter Meehan to read the Anzac Requiem.
On this day, above all days, we recall those who served in war and who did not return to receive the grateful thanks of the nation. We remember those who still sleep where they were left, amid the holly scrub in the valleys and on the ridges of Gallipoli, on the rocky and terraced hills of Palestine, and in the lovely cemeteries of France. We remember those who lie asleep in ground beneath the shimmering haze of the Libyan desert, at Bardia, Derna, Tobruk, and amid the mountain passes and olive groves of Greece and Crete, and the rugged, snow-capped hills of Lebanon and Syria. We remember those who lie buried in the jungles of Malaya and Burma, in New Guinea and the distant isles of the Pacific. We remember those who lie in unknown resting places in almost every land, and those gallant sailors whose grave is the unending sea. Especially do we remember those who died as prisoners of war, remote from their homeland and from the comforting presence of their kith and kin. We think of the service and sacrifice of the women who gave their lives in our own and foreign lands and at sea in 2 world wars. We recall too the staunch friends who fought beside us on the first Anzac Day, men of New Zealand who helped create the name Anzac, and all New Zealanders who have served alongside since. We recall all those who gave their lives in the merchant services and in British Commonwealth and Allied forces. We think of every man and woman who, in those crucial hours, died so that the lights of freedom and humanity might continue to shine. We think of those gallant men and women who died in Korea, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam, East Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan, and in peacekeeping and peace-enforcing commitments to defend our freedom and preserve peace and security. May they all rest proudly in the knowledge of their achievement, and may we and our successors in that heritage prove worthy of their sacrifice.
Would all those on the dais please stand and turn? Let us stand in silence in tribute to the fallen. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget. Party, please turn around. Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of New Zealand. National anthem. Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Ladies and gentlemen, be seated. Before we conclude today's ceremony, I would like to thank, on your behalf and on behalf of the Anzac Day Commemoration Council and the RSL, the following people and organisations: the Chairman of Trustees, Life Governors, staff, guards and volunteers of the Shrine of Remembrance; the Premier and his government for the support given to the veteran community in Victoria; the members of the Australian Defence Force for not only their support today at the Shrine, but across Victoria with Anzac Day commemorations; the City of Melbourne for preparing the city, getting it ready for today's commemoration; those men and women of the Victoria Police who are on duty, thank you for your work today, thank you for your service; the media, ABC TV and radio for broadcasting this morning's dawn service and march. We also acknowledge the traditional participation of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus, the Royal Australian Navy Band and Army Band Victoria. Our grateful thanks to the RACV with their transport arrangements for our veterans. It's been a great and lengthy relationship that the veterans have enjoyed with the RACV. Thank you. A special mention to Public Transport Victoria for their work in getting people here this morning to the dawn service, and the fleet of buses who ferry various groups to participate. And finally, I extend our sincere thanks to those organisations whose support we rely on so heavily each year: VicPol, the Salvation Army, St John's Ambulance, Ambulance Victoria, the State Emergency Services. And that special group of cadets and scouts who participated today, you should be very proud of your involvement. The service, civilian and school bands, some of whom marched twice, thank you for keeping us moving along. Our volunteer march marshals, we thank you sincerely for giving so freely of your time leading up to the march and for working today. To the staff of the RSL at Anzac House, to the volunteers at Anzac House, I thank you also. And finally, the Anzac Day staff, led by Chief Marshal Colonel Jason Cook, with his team of Bruce Jarvis and Bill Mountford, who've pulled this thing together today. We've changed the sequence a little bit, and I believe it's worked very well. I'd invite anybody in the crowd who has any thoughts on how today has worked, please write to us, Anzac House, 4 Collins Street, and I promise you that those thoughts will be fed into the Anzac Day Commemoration Council for our deliberation on both the review of this year and for planning for future years. To the members of the general public, thank you for your support in turning out today to support our veterans. Ladies and gentlemen, that now concludes the Anzac Day official ceremonies for 2019. Thank you.